So for weeks, the world was basically holding its breath, right? Tensions between the US and Iran were through the roof, and then it all just stopped. A 40-day conflict that started with threats of total war came to this sudden, shocking end. And it left everyone asking the same question: who really came out on top here? Okay, let's dive into the absolutely wild story of how a global superpower was apparently forced to the negotiating table. I mean, just listen to this. This is the kind of language that was coming out of the White House at the height of the conflict. The message from then President Trump was crystal clear. He was promising to unleash a power that would, literally wipe Iran off the map. The entire world was bracing for something truly devastating. And then, get this, just an hour and a half after that final, bone-chilling threat, everything changed. In a move that absolutely stunned everyone, from allies to enemies, Trump called it all off. He announced a ceasefire. And that's the big mystery, isn't it? What on earth could possibly happen in just 90 minutes to cause such a reversal? We might never know for sure, but the pivot was just absolute. To really get how shocking this was, you have to look at the words being used right before the ceasefire and compare them to the words used immediately after. It's like night and day. I mean, the shift is staggering. One moment, the threat is to bomb Iran back to the Stone Age. The very next, you hear this vision of a golden age for the whole Middle East, with the US even offering to help rebuild. This wasn't just a simple de-escalation. This was a complete 180-degree flip of the entire story. So what was actually in this ceasefire deal? Well, as soon as it was announced, two completely different narratives shot out of Washington and Tehran. And, you guessed it, each side claimed they had scored a massive, historic victory. So the US side was framing this as an epic victory. The official line was that they'd hit Iran's military so hard that Iran came to the table begging them to stop. But Iran was painting a very, very different picture. They said America was the one that was cornered, humbled, and ultimately forced to negotiate on terms it had previously called ridiculous. And for Iran, here was the proof, right? Their argument was simple. If you just won an epic victory and your opponent is begging you for mercy, why in the world would you agree to sit down and discuss a 10-point proposal that they wrote? The fact that the US agreed to even talk about Iran's terms, well, that's seen as the ultimate proof of who was really holding the cards. And look at what Iran was asking for. These were not small things. We're talking about the US paying for war damages, removing all sanctions, a full withdrawal of US combat forces, all while Iran gets to keep its nuclear program and its control over the super important Strait of Hormuz. For the US to even entertain these ideas was seen as a gigantic strategic concession. You know, the aftermath of the ceasefire tells its own powerful story. The vibe on the streets in Tehran versus the political chaos blowing up in Washington, you couldn't find two more different reactions. So while the US government was trying to sell this as a win, you had massive celebrations breaking out all across Iran and even in Iraq. People were flooding the streets, waving flags, celebrating what they saw as a major victory. Meanwhile, back in Washington, the mood was just fury and disbelief. Calls were actually growing to have the president removed from office. The political backlash was instant, and it was intense. We're talking about more than 85 lawmakers who started demanding action. Representative Julie Johnson did not hold back at all, calling the president's behavior deranged and saying it was time to bring out the 25th Amendment. And Senator Ed Markey took it even a step further. He basically vowed to support any move to get the president out, whether it was the 25th Amendment or impeachment, saying there is no place for a war criminal in the White House. This was an incredible level of opposition coming from inside the U.S. government itself. And just so we're all on the same page, invoking the 25th Amendment is an extreme move. It's the constitutional process for when a president is seen as incapable of doing their job. The fact that dozens of lawmakers were seriously talking about this just shows you how deep the political crisis in Washington really was. And this wasn't just a domestic issue. The entire international community was just watching this unfold in total astonishment. Russia's Security Council publicly kind of mocked the situation, saying the real winner of the whole conflict was, quote, common sense, a quality they hinted the White House had been missing for a while. But, okay, let's switch gears and look at the financial side of all this. Because when you follow the money, a very, very clear picture starts to emerge about who really benefited from this whole thing. All right, the single most valuable strategic prize in that entire region is the Strait of Hormuz. Before this war, it was a free international waterway, but a key part of this ceasefire agreement meant that it would now fall under Iranian control. The cost for the United States for just 40 days of conflict was absolutely staggering. Sources put the number right around 4 lakh crore rupees. That is a massive amount of money spent with, well, arguably not much to show for it.
Now, contrast that American loss with what Iran is projected to gain. By controlling the strait and being able to charge tolls for ships passing through, Iran is now looking at a new annual income of around 6 lakh crore rupees. They basically turned a strategic waterway into a giant cash machine.
The numbers really put it all in perspective, don't they? You've got the US down 4 lakh crore from the conflict, while Iran is now set to gain 6 lakh crore every single year. From a purely financial point of view, it's not even close. The US essentially paid a fortune to hand its adversary an ATM. So what about the long-term fallout? This was never just about a single conflict. This was really about America's standing on the world stage and the huge geopolitical message it sent to everyone watching. The source material really boils it down to 5 big defeats for the United States. First, the main goal of regime change totally failed. In fact, Iran's government came out of this stronger. Second, they lost a free international waterway. Third, Iran's nuclear program is still up and running. Fourth, that whole image of American invincibility, it got seriously tarnished. And finally, the credibility of the White House took a major hit. And that's really the ultimate takeaway here. For decades, global politics has kind of operated under this myth of American military might being unbeatable. This conflict and the way it ended sent a powerful new message to the rest of the world. America can be challenged, and it seems America can be forced to back down. Which leaves us with this final massive question. We watched threats of total annihilation turn into major concessions. We saw a superpower's whole story just crumble under pressure from both home and abroad. So was this just a blip? A temporary setback for the US? Or did this one brief, intense, 40-day conflict actually change the global balance of power for good?